The chill of the night air cut through the fabric of my tent, sending a shiver down my spine as I huddled in my sleeping bag. The crackling of the campfire had long faded into a gentle hum, leaving me alone in the cocoon of darkness. The woods around me seemed to come alive with an eerie symphony of rustling leaves and distant hooting owls. My heart raced as I remembered the campfire stories we had shared earlier that evening, stories of creatures that lurked just beyond the reach of our firelight. I tried to push those thoughts aside, reminding myself that I was safe within the confines of my tent. But then came the footsteps, soft at first, barely audible over the chorus of nocturnal sounds. The footsteps grew steadily louder, closer. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen, my ears searching for any hint of familiarity. It couldn't be an animal. The steps were too deliberate, too human-like. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind as the realization sunk in. There was someone else out there. I reached for my flashlight, fumbling with it in my trembling hands. With a flicker of light, I unzipped the tent just enough to peer outside. The beam of the flashlight sliced through the darkness, revealing nothing but the swaying trees and the eerie dance of their shadows. My heart pounded in my chest, the sound echoing in my ears as I held my breath. And then I saw it. A pair of eyes, glowing like twin embers in the night, stared back at me from the edge of the tree line. They were higher off the ground than any animals should be, and they seemed to radiate an otherworldly intelligence. I could feel those eyes on me, studying me, and a wave of primal fear washed over me. Without thinking, I called out, my voice trembling, "Who's there?" No response. The eyes didn't waver, didn't blink. They just watched. I zipped the tent closed and clutched the flashlight to my chest, my mind racing with thoughts of escape. I had to get to the car, to safety. My fingers fumbled with the zipper as I rushed to pack up my sleeping bag and belongings. The footsteps had ceased, replaced by an eerie silence that settled over the campsite like a suffocating shroud. As I stepped outside the tent, the air was thick with tension, each breath a struggle. The woods were no longer welcoming. They were a labyrinth of shadows and hidden dangers. The beam of my flashlight darted left and right, searching for any movement, any sign of the mysterious intruder. I made my way towards the car, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. The distance felt like an eternity, each step an agonizing crawl through the darkness. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, ready to snatch me away. And then, a low guttural growl echoed through the night. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my grip as I turned to face the source of the sound. Emerging from the undergrowth, a massive figure lumbered into view. Towering over me, its matted fur blended seamlessly with the shadows, making it almost appear as if it were a part of the night itself. It was a creature of nightmares, a beast that should only exist in legends and whispered tales. A Sasquatch, its eyes still glowing with an otherworldly light bore into mine. There was an intelligence in those eyes, a curiosity mixed with a hint of something darker, something primal. Its breath came in heavy, rhythmic huffs, and I could feel the weight of its gaze pressing down on me. I held my breath, my mind a whirlwind of fear and fascination. This was a moment I had never expected to experience, a meeting of worlds that defied all logic. But logic had no place here, in the heart of the woods with a creature that should not exist. With a sudden, almost imperceptible movement, the Sasquatch turned and melted back into the trees, disappearing as quickly as it had come. The tension in the air lifted, replaced by a sense of profound stillness. I stood there, my heart still racing, my mind struggling to process what I had just witnessed. The forest around me seemed to sigh, as if exhaling a collective breath it had been holding. And as the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky with pale light, I knew that this was a secret I would carry with me forever. A tale of a terrifying encounter with the unknown, a memory etched into my mind like a scar. Footsteps in the darkness, eyes glowing like embers. A Sasquatch, a creature of legend, had walked into my world, if only for a fleeting moment. And as I made my way back to the campsite, the sun's warmth spreading across my skin, I couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and unease, knowing that the woods held secrets far beyond our understanding. The wind howled through the towering pines as I sat by the crackling campfire, its feeble light casting dancing shadows that seemed to animate the forest around me. The night was eerie, and the distant hoots of owls only added to the uneasy atmosphere. My heart raced with a combination of excitement and trepidation, My first solo camping trip. Little did I know, it was about to become a night I would never forget. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something to happen. My tent was set up a stone's throw away, offering a semblance of security in its nylon walls. I glanced at my watch. It was nearly midnight. I decided it was time to turn in for the night. I doused the fire and retreated into my tent, zipping it shut against the looming darkness. The forest was alive with strange noises, rustlings, distant cracks, and the hushed whispers of the night. My heart pounded in my chest as my mind played tricks on me, morphing every sound into something sinister. I attempted to calm my racing thoughts and convince myself that it was just the usual sounds of nature. As I lay there, the noises grew louder, more distinct. Branches snapped underfoot and I held my breath, straining to hear. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was a deer or a raccoon. But then the footfalls grew heavier, deliberate, and I realized that whatever was out there was much larger than any woodland creature. I fumbled for my flashlight, my trembling hand betraying my fear. With a shaky grip, I switched it on and directed the beam towards the source of the noise. My heart froze in my chest. There, in the pale light, stood a figure unlike anything I'd ever seen, towering at least 8 feet tall, covered in matted hair, its eyes glinting with an unnatural intelligence, a Sasquatch. A gasp caught in my throat, and I instinctively shrank back against the tent's fabric. The creature's eyes locked onto mine, and a guttural growl rumbled through the air. Its stance was both menacing and curious, as if it had stumbled upon an unexpected prey. My mind raced, frantically seeking a solution to the nightmarish scenario before me. My breathing was shallow, the air thick with tension. I considered making a run for it, but the creature was positioned between me and the safety of my car. The forest had become a trap, and I was ensnared in its web. The Sasquatch took a deliberate step forward, causing the ground to tremble under its weight. Panic surged within me, but I remained frozen, unable to tear my gaze away from those piercing eyes. Time seemed to stretch, each moment an eternity of dread. Suddenly the Sasquatch's head turned slightly, as if it had heard something I hadn't. Its growl faded into a low rumble of uncertainty. My heart pounded as I strained to listen, and then I heard it. Distant voices, human voices. The Sasquatch hesitated, its eyes never leaving me, but its attention seemed to waver. The voices grew louder, and I realized they were coming from a group of campers who had set up not far from me. The creature's grip on my consciousness seemed to weaken as it turned its gaze toward the approaching voices. In that moment of distraction, I seized my chance. I scrambled out of the tent, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline, and sprinted toward the campers' voices. Adrenaline fueled my flight, the fear of being pursued by the Sasquatch giving wings to my feet. I burst into the clearing where the other campers were gathered around their fire. Their startled faces turned toward me, and before I could catch my breath, I blurted out a frantic warning. "There's something out there, something big, a Sasquatch. We need to get out of here." The campers exchanged incredulous glances, but there was an urgency in my voice that they couldn't ignore. Without hesitation, they grabbed their belongings and joined me in a hasty retreat to the safety of their vehicles. As we drove away, I stole a last glance at the woods, half expecting to see the Sasquatch emerge from the shadows. That night was etched into my memory, a chilling encounter that defied explanation. I shared my story with friends and family, but most dismissed it as a vivid imagination, heightened by the isolation of the woods. Yet the image of those piercing eyes and that towering figure remained imprinted in my mind. I would never forget the silent terror that had stalked me in the darkness, a reminder that there are mysteries lurking within the shadows of the world, waiting to shatter the boundaries of what we think we know. It was a crisp autumn weekend, and I had eagerly set out for a solo camping trip in the heart of the sprawling wilderness. I craved the solitude and the chance to escape the noise of the city, to immerse myself in the serene embrace of nature. Armed with a backpack filled with essentials and a heart full of anticipation, I ventured deep into the forest, my every step cushioned by the fallen leaves underfoot. The first night was uneventful. I set up my small tent near a babbling brook and nestled into my sleeping bag as the moon cast eerie shadows across the clearing. The wind whispered secrets through the trees, and an occasional rustle in the bushes reminded me of the forest's hidden inhabitants. Yet the comforting crackling of the campfire kept the darker thoughts at bay. As the second night descended, a palpable unease settled over me. The forest seemed alive with unseen eyes, and the calls of the night creatures took on an otherworldly quality. I shook off my apprehension, attributing it to an overactive imagination fueled by ghost stories and campfire legends. I turned in, wrapped in my sleeping bag, and attempted to lull myself to sleep with soft thoughts of starry skies and morning hikes. But then, a deep, resonating howl echoed through the forest. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze in place, straining to identify the source of the sound. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before, a haunting symphony of anguish and longing that sent shivers down my spine. I convinced myself it must be a wolf, its voice distorted by the vastness of the woods. I listened intently, my breath caught in my throat, hoping to hear the howl again, and I wasn't disappointed. It came, louder this time, closer. I scrambled to my feet, my senses on high alert, and grabbed a flashlight. I shone it into the dark expanse beyond my campsite, my heart racing as my eyes searched for any sign of movement. There was nothing, just the swaying branches and the impenetrable blackness. I returned to my tent, trying to rationalize my fear. Maybe it was just a rare species of owl or some other nocturnal creature I had never encountered. But even as I tried to calm my racing mind, the howls continued, each time more intense, as if the source was closing in on me. Dread settled like a heavy fog as I realized the howls were moving in a circle around my campsite. Panic took hold, and I fought the urge to flee into the dark, unfamiliar woods. Instead, I clung to the feeble hope that the morning light would banish my fears, just as the sun chases away the night's terrors. The long hours crawled by, the haunting chorus of howls refusing to relent. I huddled in my tent, clutching the flashlight like a lifeline, my mind racing with all manner of terrifying scenarios. And then, as if the forest itself held its breath, the howling ceased. An eerie silence descended, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig. I dared not move, not even to draw a breath. The minutes ticked by, each one stretching into an eternity, until a low, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness just beyond the thin fabric of my tent. My blood turned to ice as I realized that the source of the howls was now right outside, lurking in the shadows. My mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. With a trembling hand, I slowly unzipped the tent flap and shone the flashlight into the darkness. The beam of light revealed a pair of glowing amber eyes, eyes that were unnervingly human. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a primal terror like I had never known. I screamed, a sound that was swallowed by the vastness of the forest. The creature's eyes bore into mine, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. And then, with a speed that defied its massive form, it turned and vanished into the trees. I sat there shaken and disoriented until the first faint light of dawn began to creep across the horizon. I emerged from my tent, my body aching and my mind reeling from the night's ordeal. The forest was once again peaceful, as if the events of the night had never occurred. I packed my belongings in a daze, my thoughts consumed by the enigmatic creature that had haunted my campsite. As I walked back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had encountered something beyond explanation. A being that existed on the fringe of our understanding, a guardian of the untamed wilderness. To this day, I can still hear the mournful howls echoing in my memory, a chilling reminder of the night I came face to face with the unknown and lived to tell the tale.